You find me in my mum's 10-minute garden. I'm at the side of her little greenhouse and I'm here for a really specific reason. And that's, today I want to talk to you about how to make your plant food for free, absolutely for nothing. Most of us, if we want to feed our plants, the first thing we think about is going out and buying some plant food, but there's absolutely no reason for you to do that. By using a couple of very simple techniques, you can actually produce all your own plant food. And I'm here because one of the things behind me here is a bed of comfrey, and my mum has grown comfrey all of her life, and that's one of the actual plants that makes fantastic plant food. But before that, I'm going to start by talking about the one down to my right here. These are European nettles, and anybody who's followed me at Learn How to Garden knows I'm a real fan of nettles. Nettles have a fantastic ability to pull nutrients from deep in the ground, and they make a brilliant high nitrogen feed. If you buy any feed from a nursery or online, you'll find that it'll say NPK on it, and it'll have a number for each one, so it may say NPK 777. And that's what we would call a balanced fertilizer. That means it has 7% of N, 7% of P and 7% of K. And what those numbers refer to are nitrogen, and that makes lots of leafy growth. You then have phosphates, and the phosphates are really good for transferring energy and for transferring nutrients throughout plants. And then you have potassium, and potassium comes under K because K is the actual sort of chemical symbol for it. And those amounts will vary depending on the feed. The first feed I want to talk to you about making will be made with nettles, and nettles are really simple. They have high nitrogen. It's quite easy, isn't it? N for nettles, N for nitrogen. These are European nettles. What you do, pick the tops of a lot of nettles, which is what we have in here. I'll very gently pick them up because they're stinging nettles. We then put these in a bucket. If you want to, you can chop them into pieces using some secateurs, and you just cover it with water. Make sure the whole thing is covered with water. You then leave this for 4 to 6 weeks, and then the smelly sludge, the smelly water, the smelly liquid that's made is very high in nitrogen, and you dilute that between 10 to 1 or 15 to 1, and that's fantastic for leaf growth. So you'd use that on things like your beans to get them going early in the season, on your lettuces. But I'm actually filming this on the summer solstice, the longest day in the northern hemisphere. After this, the days get shorter, and that's very important for some of our plants. For our alliums, for our shallots, for our onions, for our garlic, up until this day they grow lots of leaves, but from here on in is when the bulbs start to swell, and we want to feed them with potassium, we want to feed them with phosphates, we want to get those roots to swell. And the two things that are best for making free feed for that are either what we have in front of me here, and this is a mixture of seaweed I've picked up off my local beach. We've got bladderwrack here, and we've got kelp, and this has been sitting in this bucket of water for about 4 to 5 days. Now, I'm not sure whether you can see as this drips away, it's a lot more viscous already than water, and again it's exactly the same thing. That's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks, and that will give you exactly the same as all those seaweed fertilizers that you see advertised. Last but not least, we come to this wonderful magic plant. This is comfrey, and that's what's behind me here. My mum lets it flower. If you're growing it purely to use in your garden to make feed, you shouldn't let it flower, but if it flowers, it really does attract huge amounts of bees. And again, we do exactly the same with this. We can put it under water and we can steep it. Again, we can leave it for 4 to 6 weeks. I think it makes the smelliest of all of these feeds. After 4 to 6 weeks, dilute it into your watering can about 10 or 15 to 1. So it's really simple. You cover them in water, you put something on the top so that they're underwater, and you leave them to do their stuff. The one way you can quicken it up is by adding one of these. This is a small air pump for an aquarium with an air stone. And all the air stone does is create more oxygen, more movement in the water, which if you've got more oxygen, you get more oxygenating bacteria, and the bacteria will break it down. It's very similar between crossing the steeping action with making what is referred to as a compost tea, because we're using the bacteria to break it down. And that's something that will speed up the process. This pump and air stone will probably cost you about £7.50, about $10. It's worth it if you're going to be making a lot of this, but you don't need to. So very simply, very quickly, you take it, put it in a bucket, cover it with water and leave it, and it's totally for free. Nettles you can pick in the wayside as you walk along if you don't have any. Kelp you can pick up off the beach. Comfrey you may have to grow yourself. If you are in Europe, bocking, I think it's bocking 14 or 13, I can never remember. It was actually bred before the war, and it's what's called sterile. It doesn't set seeds, and that's what we have here. And the way that you get more of that is from root cuttings, and we did how to do root cuttings in one of our newsletters back in November. Very simple, very quick. I hope that shows you how to make food for free for your garden. Thanks a lot for watching.